Welcome to IFES' Dialogues on Democracy. I'm Editorial and Communications Manager Adam Gallagher, and today I'm speaking with Senior Global Electoral Advisor and Ukraine Country Director Peter Erben. Peter is one of the few international experts ever called upon to direct national elections for other nations. He was the Chief Electoral Officer of Afghanistan during its 2015 parliamentary and provincial council elections, and directed out-of-country elections for Afghanistan's 2004 presidential elections and the 2005 Iraqi parliamentary elections. He is a self-described technology geek. Peter and I discussed a hot-button topic in electoral administration, the role of technology. From the United States to Kenya, election technology has received significant scrutiny in recent years, both its possibilities and pitfalls. For Peter, traditional thinking and approaches are fundamental to the successful and gradual implementation of election technologies. Hi, Peter. Thanks for joining us today. To start, can you talk about some of the myths and misconceptions about the role of technology in elections and how modernization can actually lead to a more vulnerable electoral process?
For a very long time, many had hoped that electoral technology would offer a revolution in how elections are conducted. Replacing traditional paper-based approaches, we believe would present a dramatic improvement in voter identification, faster and easier voting and results, higher accuracy, increased transparency, integrity, public trust, and lowered cost. Unfortunately, we believe this promise is yet to be fulfilled. We see that the electoral technologies have proven vulnerable to failure and security breaches, distrust by both contestants and voters, to inflated cost, and indeed, importantly, to legal challenge by disgruntled political actors. Misperception and suspicion of electoral technology have often proven as damaging as the actual weakness of the technology, a fact well exploited by losing candidates, particularly in closely contested high-stake elections as we have seen recently. Electoral management bodies are under enormous pressure to implement new technologies by politicians, by civic society, by vendors, and in fact by the misperception that progress, being modern, equates to using cutting-edge technology wherever possible. It's therefore extremely important that electoral leaders around the world resist these pressures and let good judgment and common sense prevail in order to deliver elections of ever-increasing quality to their people.
So, Peter, what sort of traditional thinking is fundamental to implementing electoral technologies, and how can this aid innovation?
Well, we at IFES believe that electoral technologies can indeed significantly improve the quality of the electoral process, but it must be wisely used to augment traditional approaches, not as an immediate and wholesale replacement of such. We believe that both traditional paper-based systems and electronic systems have significant weaknesses and advantages. When used together, they mutually reinforce each other, leveraging the significant symbiosis between the old and the new. An EMB should, for example, be proud to implement, for example, paper-based balloting and a well-observed manual count combined with electronic result tabulation. Even better if, for example, the hand-signed result forms and tabulation reports of election day are made available online immediately for public scrutiny and allow observer groups to do parallel vote tabulation efforts, and through these verify the official result, build trust around the outcome of the election. One fundamental problem is that the discussion, decision, and implementation of new technology often sucks out far too much oxygen of many EMBs who have limited time and resources. Not only do many EMBs struggle to establish appropriate procedures and training for new technology, they also unfortunately neglect to maintain their traditional mechanisms. The compounding nature of these two factors create immense risk for their elections. At IFES, we believe that the last 10 years have been sobering when it comes to the opportunities and risks associated with electoral technology. Now more than ever, we believe modernization has to be approached carefully. All options have to be considered, not just a careful examination of all existing technologies, but also the option to create homegrown solutions that perform better in the national context, and importantly, to examine pros and cons of adopting and strengthening existing and more manual approaches.
So you touched on this briefly in your previous answer, but can you go a little bit more in depth about IFES's approach to introducing new technologies in the electoral process?
Yes. At IFES, we advocate for a simple approach, solid, patient management, and excellent leadership when considering modernization, and the role that technology will play within a modernization. When introducing new technology, well-proven traditional aspects must receive particular attention. It took centuries to develop the processes and procedures that make the paper-based system transparent and trustworthy. Developing similar processes and procedures for new technology is much more challenging, but we often neglect its importance. Aspects of this traditional approach that deserves attention include: when technologies are considered, it's important that there's a comprehensive legal and procedural framework to underpin these new technologies. It's extremely important that we have inclusive and consultative system design of implementation where we allow all stakeholders to understand what is happening and to contribute. For all technologies, it's important that we have transparent and auditable paper trails so that we can prove that the technology performs correctly. We must have training, and we must be accountable for that training so that we ensure that the technologies are used correctly. And lastly, it's very important to build trust through public information and interaction with those that will use the technology. We believe that electoral leaders must demand a broader, more open and careful deliberation of these technology choices. Electoral leaders can in fact insist that such an important decision on technology must be subject to a comprehensive, well-resourced feasibility study. Such feasibility studies can be structured in many different ways, but at IFES we have tried our best to capture the best practices from around the world and have published a methodology for feasibility study that offers the EMBs a guideline for what to consider when looking at modernization and new technologies. This methodology for feasibility studies include that there has to be an participatory, open feasibility study committee that doesn't just have technicians on it, but also has input from other actors affected by the choice that include members of civil society and academia and of other technology-related institutions outside the EMB. We believe that a feasibility study must assess the system that is already in place and look at what problem is it actually that we're trying to solve with the new technology. This is the outset of thinking about new solutions, is to identify what problems are we trying to fix. Then the feasibility study must identify all potential methodologies and technologies and have a thorough analysis of all factors affecting the choice between these options. Another aspect is that we believe in well-managed and ethical vendor involvement, where all vendors and their respective technologies have equal opportunity to make their case, where we don't end up only evaluating technologies by those vendors who speak loudest. And lastly, once that we look at the most interesting options, we must conduct comprehensive pilot tests of 2 or even more technologies in unofficial elections to scrutinize all aspects of a proposed methodology in real life to see how that technology performs when handled by real voters.
Okay. Well, thanks, Peter. It was nice having you come in today and talk about a really both interesting and controversial issue being electoral technology, and we hope next time you're in Washington you can stop by again and talk to us.
It was a pleasure to share my thoughts with you.
Great. Thank you.
For more on how IFES promotes democracy around the world, please visit www.ifes.org.